All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Channel 6 TV, Community Focus. Glad you could be with us tonight, and we're going to make a little stop around Tim Archtown today, and stopped in at the UK Nelson County Extension Office, and there's always something going on here. I don't care what day of the week you stop in, what time of the day, there's something going on here. If you're looking on the board, sausage making may be going on, maybe something else going on, 4-H camp coming up soon. But right now, talking to Robbie Smith, and Robbie is I call you the guru.
Well,
You're the guru when it comes to gardens, it comes to lawns and things of that. Now, anything outdoors is pretty much you're my go-to guy. So,
very good.
Spring's hitting us right now. What's going on?
Spring is lovely right now. Yeah, it is, and there's lots of things in bloom and lots of blooms to come.
Mm-hmm.
That's the beautiful thing about spring. It's kind of a sequence all the way through. Hopefully we get a spring. Right now we're having a spring, but
Yeah.
you know, in years past we've gone from mild weather to hot weather in a matter of a day and been done with spring. But so far it's been really nice.
Well, this weather, and I know you can't control that, but it seems like we can't go about 3 or 4 days without a good little rain coming through. I know in the past, you get a week or so of dry weather. We're not getting that anymore. Not anyway, recently anyway.
Well, yeah, and our memories are short, but yeah, it seems that way that we're getting rains every few days, and you know, I hate to talk poorly about the rain because you can remember years past where it just completely dries up and we don't have any. And 2012 is probably our most recent time that we suffered through a pretty substantial drought. However, you know, last year was an awful tough crop year too, trying to get through and get crops in the ground or get crops out of the field. It just rained all the time. It seemed.
Well, I know this. Of course, right now we're still in the late part of April, and Mike Johnson, a friend of mine, went to church Sunday morning. He and I got in a heated discussion about when to put our garden out.
Oh.
And I'm ready to put mine out today, but he says May 6th. Don't do it before May 6th.
You know, I agree with Mike. There are some things that you can put out. You know, I have my cold crops out right now, which are your cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, those kinds of things, kale. Those could be out, and they've been out for about 3 weeks now.
Yeah.
Potatoes can be out, those cool season crops. But we see a problem every year with tomatoes. Every year tomatoes get early blight, that's where they fire up from the bottom, they get blossom end rot, and that is entirely a response to weather, getting them out too early.
Yeah.
When we put them out before the soil temperature warms up, the plant just stays in stress, and with that stress comes disease, and in this case disease and just cultural. The blossom end rot's not a disease, it's more of a plant's not uptaking the nutrients in the soil at the proper levels, and that's got to do with temperature as much as anything. But if you can stand to wait, I know that our desire is to have the first tomato, the tomato by 4th of July, you know, but if you can stand to wait, you're going to have a better crop on all your vegetables until that, like Mike said, May 6th. It's, you know, what Fred Wish used to say, plant your tomatoes on Derby Day.
Yeah.
That kind of time frame. So that's good advice.
Well, I guess we could. Of course, there's frost always possibility
Yeah.
down between now and then too, as well as, like you said, soil temperature. Trees. I mean, I've had a lot of tree damage this past year, and I'm in the process of trimming trees right now.
Yeah, you know, we're seeing ash trees go by the wayside left and right all over the county, and that's the emerald ash borer. We had a unique thing happen last fall rather, when leaves were still on. We had that ice, and we lost some really good trees because of that. The leaves are still on the trees, the mass was heavy, and the ice just broke them apart. Things that I really still recommend because that's a rarity that we have, like some of the lacebark elms, Chinese elms. They're really good trees, but man, they were damaged pretty hard with that freak kind of weather event that we had.
Well, the garden's coming up. I know there's a new phenomenon coming on, and I've even thought about it, as raised beds, raised gardens, and I know that's starting to pick up. And obviously, for some people, it's probably the best choice if you don't have a lot of place to raise a garden.
Especially if you have a site that has been on disturbed soil. Okay, the dozer's been in, they remove the topsoil. Sometimes they even sell the topsoil if you're in a subdivision. So you end up with a compacted clay soil, and your only option is a raised bed. In fact, I've got a talk this evening over at the library on gardening in small spaces, and part of small space gardening is raised beds. And you can make a raised bed. It doesn't have to be very tall. 4 to 6 inches really is all you need to get it above the poor drainage. The taller, the better for us, not necessarily the plant, because
Yeah.
the roots aren't going to be much deeper. We don't have to bend over as far.
That's why I quit putting out green beans. I can't bend over and pick them.
Well, I like the way most of our farmers market folks pick green beans is we'll put on a crop put in a crop like Savannah or some of the other green beans that come on pretty much at once.
Yeah.
Just go pull the whole plant up and then pick them in the shade tree, under the shade tree.
That's not a bad idea. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah. Makes it a little easier.
So basically right now, for somebody that's just watching, preparing their garden, basically tilling it, getting it ready to go, fertilize, is this a good time to fertilize, or should that have already been done?
Well, we need to fertilize gardens. We don't need to fertilize lawns this time of year. That's just giving fuel to the weeds that we may still have in there. So that's a concern. You do need to be going after crabgrass right now. It's already germinated, so you're behind if you haven't gotten a pre-emergent down in this year. Something you just mentioned about preparing the soil for garden. You know, we talked about rain every few days. Well, we don't want to till that garden with wet soil. And a good manner of testing that is take you a handful of it, squeeze it, and drop it from about waist height. If it shatters when it hits the ground, you can till. If it stays in that clump, you should stay off of it.
Okay.
So those are some, I mean, if we till it, we're going to destroy structure anyway, but if we till it wet, then we just make a mess for the rest of the year. So that's an important thing.
Well, and the big thing is, if somebody has any questions, and I know that I have constantly have questions. I know your people are coming here all year round and checking out. You've got garden tours, you've got all kinds of things, you've got all kinds of resources for people. But if typically, what are you looking at right now? Somebody's starting to ask questions. Obviously, first one, how do I get my tomatoes to grow fast? But I'm sure there's other things.
There's a lot of the biggest questions I get this time of year and throughout the year is how do I get rid of moles?
How do we get rid of moles and shoot them?
You move.
And I think that's probably about the best answer.
Moles, the best thing we have found through research, Tom Barnes did this before his passing, is the earthworm-shaped baits. What you got to do is roll down the yard, make sure that you've got all the runs rolled down, and then watch for that next one to pop up. That's usually their main feeding run.
Yeah.
And so that's where they're going to move back and forth and then break off to the other directions. Put your bait in that main feeding run, and they'll come along and eat it, and it will get rid of them.
Yeah.
Now, they're an industrious bunch, so there's usually one per acre because they're a little territorial, but just as soon as one is gone, somebody else is going to take over. So you have to be diligent with getting rid of them. But that's what he found is by far the best method of getting rid of them. The two things that I hear most is that I've got moles. I need to get rid of the grubs. Well, that's a falsehood. Their main food source is what we know when you have grubs is that you got a good soil and you got a good earthworm population.
Okay.
Neither one of those two things are bad. We like having both of those in a yard. So it's not the grubs, so don't go buying something to treat the grubs just for that. I've seen one problem in the county in the last 19 years of actually a grub issue. So it's not common that we see that problem. And there's a number of baits, things out there that kind of deter them from being around. And that's all they do is they deter them. They realize it's not going to hurt them. They come back. So the best thing we found is that earthworm-shaped bait. And doing the method of rolling everything down and making sure you know which one's their main run.
Okay. So again, people are going to be calling you up, and basically your job is all the way from the big farmer to the patio farmer. So I mean, you've got a lot of territory to cover.
Yes, and that happened a few years ago. I became the ag agent and retained my duties as hort agent as well. So yeah, I'm covering a little bit of territory right now. And that's okay. So it's good. I enjoy learning something new, and I don't always know the answer, but I'm certain I can find you the answer through one of our many specialists at UK. And I've done had a lot of conversation with Dr. Jeff Limcooler this year on animal diets, feeding, and poor quality forage, and all those kinds of things. So it's always exciting to me to learn something new and retain that long enough to tell somebody else.
Well, you got weather, you got soil conditions, maybe pH balance, all that stuff that I don't understand, and all the other variables that go in. It's a wonder sometimes we have crops at all, that all the things that go into things, but we do have people like you here, like I said, to help guide us in the right direction.
We have got some really good farmers that have been doing this a long time and are rarely stumped, but we're here when they do.
Yeah.
And we have a whole bunch of different specialists in all kinds of different categories at UK that does research on these things, that have 30 and 40 years of practical knowledge that they've learned themselves that they can share with us.
And in addition to vegetables and crops of that nature, you mentioned earlier, you also you help out people if they got lawn issues or issues with the trees and things. So basically, you're covering everything. Mother Nature is your friend.
Yes. Well, some days she is. Other days she's not. When we get all this rain, when we don't actually need it,
right.
We'd like to see that spread over the course of the year, which last year it was. We just got a lot of it along the whole season.
Well, Robbie, I appreciate you taking the time. Like I said, I know you're quite busy doing all this stuff. And again, he's the resource we have here in Nelson County. And there is, I guess, an ag agent in just about every county. We also cover Marion and Washington here. So.
Yes, you do. Over in Washington County, you have Dennis Morganson, who's a horticulture agent. Right now, they don't have an ag agent. Mm-hmm. But over in Marion County, you have Kristen Miracle, who is your ag agent and has been with us almost a year, I guess, now.
Okay.
So
you got plenty of resources. So if you have crappy tomatoes, it's your fault because you didn't call them. So, so again, and he does know that I'm a frequent caller and questioner because there's a lot we don't know about Mother Nature and a lot that they do. So hopefully we can work together and have a good garden, good lawn, and good everything because it's always a challenge. So Robbie, appreciate you being here. Thank you for taking time for us today, and good luck on this growing season.
Well, I hope it's a good one. Everybody needs a good one, and I look forward to all the questions that may come.
All right, Robbie Smith here at the Nelson County Extension Office here in Bardstown. And again, each extension offices in each county, give them a call. Thanks a lot for tuning in. We'll be back right after this here on Community Focus.